Billionaire single mom finds janitor feeding her autistic son. What happens next will shock you. What would you do if you saw a complete stranger sitting with your child, feeding him like he had known him forever? That was the exact question running through Samantha Hayes' mind as she stood frozen on the edge of the school playground. The cool autumn wind brushed through her blonde hair, but she barely felt it. Her piercing blue eyes narrowed as she watched the scene that made her heart pound. Her 9-year-old son, Ethan, quietly eating his lunch, sitting on a worn-out bench, with a man she had never seen before gently coaxing him to take one more bite. Ethan hardly ever ate in public. He hardly ever ate at all without a struggle. Yet here he was sitting calmly, nodding at something the stranger said, even allowing him to wipe a bit of ketchup from the corner of his mouth. Samantha's manicured nails dug into her palm as she stepped closer, her expensive silk dress clinging to her curves as if reminding her that she did not belong here in a public school playground, among peeling paint and the smell of disinfectant and cheap cafeteria food. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sharp enough to make the boy flinch. The man turned slowly, his dark brown eyes locking on hers. He was tall, at least 62, broad shoulders stretching against the navy blue janitor's uniform, his sleeves rolled up to reveal muscled forearms dusted with cleaning powder. His jawline was sharp, his skin the warm tone of mahogany, and there was something about the quiet confidence in his stance that made her breath catch, though she would never admit it. "Mrs. Hayes," he said calmly, as though he already knew her, "your son was hungry." Samantha crossed her arms, masking the unease that crawled over her skin. "And you thought it was appropriate to feed him? Who even are you?" He stood up, towering over her, but his voice stayed soft, almost too gentle for a man of his size. "My name's Marcus Reed, I work here, I'm the janitor. I saw Ethan sitting here by himself again. He looked like he hadn't touched his lunch. I just didn't want him to go hungry." Samantha's lips pressed into a thin line. "That's not your responsibility." Marcus didn't flinch, maybe not, but someone had to care enough to notice. The words stung more than she wanted them to. She hated that he was right. Ethan's soft voice broke the tension. "Mommy, Marcus makes me laugh." It was so rare to hear Ethan speak voluntarily that Samantha felt her chest tighten. She looked down at her son's wide, innocent eyes, then back at the man who had somehow broken through Ethan's walls in a way even the most expensive therapists couldn't. Still, Samantha was not about to let her guard down, not here, not with a stranger. "Thank you for whatever you did," she said stiffly, grabbing Ethan's hand, "but next time leave my son alone." She turned to leave, heels clicking against the pavement, but she couldn't shake the way Marcus' gaze followed them, not hostile, not apologetic, just steady. Later that evening, Samantha sat in her penthouse apartment, the city lights glowing through the massive glass windows. Her assistant had just left after dropping off a fresh stack of contracts. The apartment was spotless, quiet, too quiet. Ethan was in his room, building the same tower of blocks he built every night. She watched him from the doorway, her heart aching. Why did she feel so angry earlier? Was it really because a janitor, a man she didn't know, had fed her son? Or was it because he had done something she, with all her wealth and resources, had failed to do? Across town, Marcus sat in his modest apartment, eating leftover chicken out of a plastic container. His mind wasn't on the food, it was on the boy. Ethan reminded him so much of his younger brother who had been on the spectrum. Marcus had practically raised him after their father walked out. He knew the signs, the quiet isolation, the way the world sometimes felt too loud for them. He knew what it meant for someone like Ethan to trust enough to let another person feed him. But the boy's mother, she was something else. Cold, sharp-tongued, but not unkind, not really. He had seen something flicker in her eyes when Ethan spoke, something fragile. The next morning, Samantha tried to ignore the knot in her stomach as she dropped Ethan at school. She had meetings stacked back to back, but somehow she found herself parking outside the school again at lunch hour. She told herself it was just to check if Ethan was okay, just to make sure the man stayed away from him. But when she walked toward the playground and saw Ethan sitting next to Marcus again, smiling, something inside her cracked. Marcus looked up at her, and this time, instead of standing, he just nodded once respectfully, then went back to encouraging Ethan to finish his sandwich. For the first time, Samantha didn't interrupt. She stood there silently watching. And just like that, a door she didn't know existed began to open. That question haunted Samantha Hayes the next day as she sat behind the tinted windows of her black SUV, watching her son on the playground. She had told herself she was just here to check if Ethan was safe, to make sure that Janitor wasn't crossing any lines. But if she was being honest with herself, she was curious, about Ethan, yes, but also about Marcus Reed. And what she saw that afternoon would change everything. Ethan was sitting cross-legged in the sandbox, running his fingers through the grains of sand like he always did when he felt overwhelmed. Two older boys walked past, whispering and laughing. Samantha frowned. She couldn't hear what they said, but she saw Ethan's shoulders slump. Then one of the boys kicked sand toward him. Ethan didn't fight back, he never did, he just froze, rocking slightly, his way of coping. Before Samantha could get out of the car, she saw a blur of navy blue. Marcus! He was there in seconds, stepping between Ethan and the boys. His voice was calm but firm. Hey, that's enough. The boys froze, intimidated by his towering frame. You think it's funny to pick on someone who can't fight back, Marcus said, his deep voice low but carrying weight. And no, sir, one of them mumbled. Good, then you can apologize to him now. The boys muttered apologies before running off. Samantha felt her chest tighten as she watched Marcus crouch down to Ethan's level, speaking softly until the boys' rocking slowed. Then Marcus gently brushed the sand from his shirt and handed him a toy truck from the box beside the bench. Ethan smiled, a small fleeting smile, but it was there. And just like that, Samantha felt something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. When the bell rang, Samantha stepped out of her car, heels clicking on the pavement. Marcus turned when he saw her, and for a moment neither of them spoke. I saw what happened, Samantha said finally. Marcus nodded once. Kids can be cruel, Ethan shouldn't have to deal with that alone. Samantha swallowed hard. Thank you for stepping in. He gave a small shrug, his muscles rippling under the rolled-up sleeves of his uniform. It's what anyone decent would do. Not everyone would, Samantha said quietly, surprising even herself. Their eyes locked just for a moment, and there was something unspoken there, something dangerous. Later that night, Samantha sat at the kitchen counter, wine glass in hand, unable to get Marcus out of her mind. She had always prided herself on control, on being untouchable. But why did she keep replaying the way he had crouched down to Ethan's level? The way his hand had rested protectively on the boy's shoulder. Why did it make her feel like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she thought? In his small apartment, Marcus sat on the couch, his work boots kicked off, staring at the ceiling. He had seen rich parents before, dismissive, impatient, too busy to notice what their kids were going through. But Samantha, she was different. Beneath the designer dresses and the perfect hair, she was scared. He could see it in the way she hovered near Ethan, in the way her voice softened whenever she spoke to him. Marcus had built walls around his own heart after losing people he loved. He had sworn not to get involved. But there was something about Ethan and about Samantha that made those walls start to crumble. The next day, Samantha surprised herself by bringing Ethan to school early. Marcus was already there, sweeping the hallway. Good morning, she said, her tone softer than usual. Marcus looked up surprised. Morning. I brought Ethan early because he said he wanted to show you his new puzzle. Marcus's expression warmed. Yeah, well, I'd love to see it. Samantha watched as Ethan proudly pulled out the puzzle from his bag. Marcus crouched down beside him, studying the pieces with interest. Looks tricky, Marcus said, but I think we can figure it out together. For a long moment, Samantha just stood there watching them. And for the first time in years, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't fighting this battle alone. By the time she left that morning, there was a strange warmth in her chest. Not just gratitude. Something more dangerous. Something she wasn't sure she wanted to feel. The school auditorium buzzed with chatter as parents, teachers, and kids gathered for the annual Fall Talent Day. Samantha Hayes sat in the front row, her heart pounding. This was supposed to be a good day, a big step forward for Ethan. His therapist had suggested it might help him practice being around other kids. But Samantha could already see the tension in his small shoulders as he sat beside her, clutching his headphones and rocking slightly. She reached for his hand. "Sweetheart, you're okay, just a few minutes then we can go home." Ethan didn't answer. His eyes darted around the room, his breathing growing shallow. And then the microphone screeched with a sudden burst of feedback. Ethan flinched so hard he dropped his headphones. "No, no, no," he whimpered, covering his ears. The noise of the crowd, the clapping, the bright stage lights, it was all too much. Samantha tried to soothe him, but he slid off his chair and curled into a ball on the floor, sobbing. People were staring, whispering. Samantha felt her chest tighten, panic clawing at her throat. Then a calm, familiar voice cut through the chaos. "It's okay, Ethan, I'm here." "Marcus." He was suddenly kneeling beside them, his presence like a shield. "Can I?" he asked, glancing at Samantha for permission. She hesitated only a second, then nodded. Marcus slowly reached out, placing a steady hand on Ethan's back. His deep, even voice filled the space. "Breathe with me, buddy, just like we practiced, in and out, good job." He kept his tone soft, steady, unshaken, until Ethan's sobs turned into hiccups and his breathing slowed. "Let's get out of here," Marcus said gently, scooping Ethan into his arms as if he weighed nothing. Samantha followed, her heels clicking across the tile as they left the crowded auditorium. Outside, Marcus set Ethan down on the grass, letting him sit in the quiet. "You did great, champ," he said, giving Ethan a small high five. "That was a lot, but you got through it." Ethan's lips trembled, but he nodded, leaning against Marcus like he belonged there. Samantha swallowed hard, her throat thick with emotion. For a long moment she just stood there, watching Marcus with her son. I don't know what to say," she whispered finally. "You don't have to say anything," Marcus replied without looking at her. "He's okay, that's what matters." Samantha nodded, blinking back tears. "No one has ever been able to calm him down like that," she admitted, "not even me." Marcus glanced up at her then, his gaze steady but gentle. "You're doing the best you can," he said softly, "but you don't have to do it all alone." The words landed like a blow, not painful but deep. For years, Samantha had built her life around control, her company, her schedule, her carefully curated world. But in this moment, standing in the crisp autumn air, watching Marcus with Ethan, she felt her walls start to crumble. That night, Samantha couldn't shake the image of Marcus' strong arms around her son, the quiet authority in his voice. Before she could second-guess herself, she found herself dialing the number the school had on file for him. "Hello," his deep voice on the other end sent a strange shiver through her. "It's Samantha Hayes," she said, suddenly nervous. "I just wanted to thank you for today." "You don't have to thank me," Marcus replied. "I know, but I want to. Maybe you could come by the house sometime this weekend. Ethan keeps talking about you." There was a pause. "You sure about that?" Yes, her voice was firmer than she expected. "I think it would mean a lot to him. And maybe to me," she thought but didn't say. When Marcus arrived at the Hayes penthouse that Saturday afternoon, he looked almost out of place in his clean, casual jeans and black t-shirt. Samantha's chest tightened at the sight of him standing there, broad-shouldered against the backdrop of the city skyline. Ethan came running to the door, an excited smile on his face, something Samantha rarely saw. "Marcus." "Hey, champ," Marcus said, crouching to Ethan's level. "You ready to show me that puzzle?" As the two of them moved toward the living room, Samantha found herself lingering in the doorway, watching them. For the first time in years, her home didn't feel so empty. By the time Marcus left that evening, Ethan was calmer than Samantha had seen him in weeks. And Samantha? She was left staring out at the glittering city lights, her heart pounding with something dangerously close to hope. The city lights glowed like diamonds against the night sky as Samantha sat alone in her penthouse living room. Ethan had gone to bed hours ago, but Samantha couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying the image of Marcus sitting on her floor earlier that day, patiently helping Ethan with his puzzle. His deep laugh when Ethan finally fit the last piece, the way her son had leaned into him as if he had known him his whole life. It was dangerous how easy Marcus made it all look. And how much she wanted him to stay. Without thinking, Samantha picked up her phone and sent a text. "Are you still awake?" The reply came almost instantly. "Yeah, is everything okay?" She hesitated, then typed back. "Can you come back? I just need to talk." Half an hour later, Marcus was standing in her doorway again. "You sure about this?" he asked gently, stepping inside. Samantha nodded, suddenly aware of how vulnerable she felt, barefoot, hair down, wearing nothing but a silk robe that brushed just above her knees. "Can I get you something?" she asked, trying to fill the silence. "Coffee, wine." "Water's fine," Marcus said. When she returned from the kitchen, she found him standing by the window, looking out at the glittering skyline. "You've got a good view," he said quietly. "It's lonely," Samantha admitted before she could stop herself. Marcus turned his dark eyes steady. "It doesn't have to be." She sank into the couch, running her fingers over the rim of her glass. "Do you know how hard it is to keep everything together all the time, to run a company, raise a child, and still feel like you're failing at both?" Marcus sat down across from her, leaning forward on his knees. "You're not failing, Samantha, you're surviving, and that takes strength most people wouldn't understand." Her throat tightened. "I wasn't always this guarded, but when Ethan's father walked out the moment we got his diagnosis, I didn't have a choice. I built walls because I had to protect my son and myself." Marcus' jaw clenched. "I get that, my dad walked out too. I practically raised my little brother on my own. He was on the spectrum like Ethan. I had to grow up fast." Their eyes met, two people who had lived through abandonment, now sitting across from each other with the quiet understanding that comes from shared pain. Samantha set her glass down, her hand trembling slightly. "I don't let people in easily, but you make it hard not to." Marcus reached out, his calloused hand brushing hers just lightly. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly. The simple sincerity in his voice made something inside her shatter. Her heart raced, but she didn't pull away. For a moment they just sat there, hands touching, the tension between them thick enough to feel. Then Ethan's soft cry came from the hallway, breaking the moment. Samantha stood quickly. "Nightmare," she said, moving toward her son's room. Marcus followed without hesitation. Ethan was sitting up in bed, tears streaming down his face. "I'm here, buddy," Marcus said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Bad dream, huh? You're safe now." Ethan sniffled and leaned against him, and Marcus wrapped an arm around him. Samantha stood in the doorway, her heart aching at the sight. When Ethan finally drifted back to sleep, Marcus stood, pulling the blanket up around him. Samantha whispered, "Thank you." Marcus looked at her, his gaze steady but full of something unspoken. "You don't have to thank me, I want to be here." And for the first time, Samantha believed him. Back in the living room, the air between them felt different. Samantha took a step closer. "You're good with him," she said softly. Marcus' lips curved into a small smile. "He's a good kid." Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Then Samantha looked away, her cheeks warm. "Good night, Marcus," she whispered. He nodded, heading toward the door, but as he left, Samantha couldn't help the flutter in her chest. She wasn't just grateful anymore. She wanted him there. The following weeks passed like a quiet storm. Marcus came by the penthouse more often, at first just to help Ethan with puzzles and games, but soon Samantha noticed that Ethan seemed calmer every day Marcus was around. And she, against her better judgment, found herself looking forward to those visits just as much as her son did. It was a Saturday evening when everything finally shifted. Rain pelted against the wide glass windows of the penthouse. Samantha was in the kitchen making cocoa, something she hadn't done in years, while Marcus and Ethan built a fort in the living room with pillows and blankets. Ethan giggled as Marcus pretended to be a dragon guarding the fort, and Samantha found herself leaning against the counter, smiling, really smiling. When Ethan grew tired and wandered off to his room, leaving his blanket fortress behind, Samantha and Marcus found themselves alone in the quiet glow of the room. "You're good at this," Samantha said softly, handing him a mug of cocoa. Marcus took it, his fingers brushing hers, just enough to send a spark through her. "It's easy when you care," he replied, his voice low. For a long moment, they just stood there, the rain hammering against the glass, their eyes locked. Samantha set her mug down, her chest rising and falling faster than she wanted it to. "I don't know how you do it," she whispered. "You walk in here and somehow everything feels lighter." Marcus took a step closer, his tall frame almost towering over her now. Maybe it's not me, he said. Maybe it's you finally letting someone in. Her breath caught. Before she could think, before she could talk herself out of it, Samantha leaned forward just slightly. Marcus didn't hesitate. His lips met hers, slow and warm at first, then deeper, hungrier, as though all the tension of the last few weeks had been building to this moment. Samantha's fingers curled into his shirt, pulling him closer, her heart pounding. For the first time in years, she felt alive. But then reality crashed back. Samantha pulled back suddenly, her breathing unsteady. "This is a mistake," she said, stepping away. I can't do this." Marcus' jaw tightened. "Because I'm the janitor." Her eyes widened. "No, because you're the first man I've trusted since Ethan's father walked out, and if I lose you too, I don't know what it will do to him, to me." Marcus took a slow breath, his voice calm but firm. "Samantha, I'm not him, I'm not going anywhere." But Samantha shook her head, panic creeping in. I need time." Marcus nodded slowly, the muscle in his jaw working. "I get it," he said, stepping back, "but just so you know, I meant what I said. I'm here when you're ready." Then he turned and left, the door closing softly behind him, leaving Samantha standing there with her chest aching. The days that followed were painfully quiet. Marcus didn't come by, and though Samantha told herself it was for the best, she couldn't ignore the way Ethan asked for him every night. Or the way she caught herself glancing at her phone, hoping for a message that didn't come. And then one Friday afternoon, Samantha got a call from the school, a call that made her blood run cold. "There was an incident," the principal said urgently. When Samantha arrived, she found Ethan sitting in the nurse's office crying and Marcus standing nearby, his shirt slightly torn, his lip bleeding. "What happened?" Samantha demanded. Marcus looked up, his expression calm but deadly serious. "Two older kids cornered Ethan behind the gym. I got there in time, but," he gestured at his lip, "one of them swung first." Samantha's hands trembled as she crouched to comfort her son. "You protected him," she said softly, looking up at Marcus. "I told you," Marcus replied, his dark eyes locking on hers. "I'm not going anywhere." At that moment, Samantha realized that this man she had tried to push away, had become part of her son's world. And part of hers. The penthouse was silent that night, but Samantha's mind was anything but. She stood by the window, staring out at the city skyline, Marcus' words echoing in her head. "I'm not going anywhere." She had spent years building walls to keep men like Ethan's father out, men who ran at the first sign of difficulty. But Marcus hadn't run. He had stood in front of her son, literally taking punches for him. And Samantha realized then that she was done being afraid. The next morning, Samantha dressed simply: jeans, a soft sweater, no silk gowns, no armor. She drove to the school even though it was Saturday, her heart pounding as she spotted Marcus outside, repairing a broken swing on the playground. He looked up when he saw her, surprise flashing across his face. "Samantha." She swallowed hard, stepping closer. "Marcus, I owe you an apology." He set down his wrench, wiping his hands on a rag. "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do," she insisted. "I pushed you away because I was scared, but yesterday when I saw you standing there with Ethan, I knew I couldn't keep doing this. I can't keep shutting you out." Marcus' jaw softened, but he stayed silent, waiting. Samantha took a breath, her voice trembling. "I want you in his life, and in mine, not just as the man who helps us but as the man we can count on." Marcus stepped closer, his dark eyes searching hers. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice low. Samantha nodded. "I'm sure." This time when he kissed her, there was no hesitation, no fear. It was soft at first, then deeper, a promise of everything they had both been holding back. When they pulled apart, Samantha's eyes were wet, but her smile was genuine. "You scare me," she admitted. Marcus chuckled softly. "Good, love's supposed to scare you a little." Just then, Ethan came running from the car where Samantha had left him. "Mommy," he said, tugging her hand, "can Marcus come home with us?" Samantha glanced at Marcus, then back at her son. "Yes, sweetheart," she said softly, "Marcus is coming home with us." Ethan grinned and grabbed Marcus' hand without hesitation. And as they walked toward the car, Samantha realized something she hadn't felt in years. For the first time, they were a family. A year later, the penthouse felt different, warmer. Ethan's laughter echoed through the hallways as Marcus helped him build a model airplane on the living room floor. Samantha watched from the kitchen, her hand resting on the small baby bump under her dress. Marcus caught her eye and grinned, his smile so full of love it made her heart ache in the best way. "You okay?" he asked. Samantha nodded, tears prickling her eyes. "More than okay." She crossed the room, kneeling beside them, wrapping her arms around Marcus' strong shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered against his neck, "for proving me wrong about love." Marcus kissed her temple, holding her close. "You didn't need proving, you just needed someone who wouldn't give up." And as Ethan looked up from his model airplane and giggled, Samantha knew she had finally chosen right for herself, for her son, and for the future they were building together.